Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'm going to be doing my discussion video for the Tales and Teacups book club pick for the months of May and June. So this month, for these 2 months, it ended up being True Colors by Kristin Hannah. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to split this video up into kind of my discussion and then include those who participated in here as well. So I was really shocked. So this is the 7th Kristin Hannah book that I've read, and obviously with how much I've loved her previous work, I had really high expectations going into this. And in particular, I really like how her books focus on the complexities of female relationships, whether it's between friends, sisters, mother and daughter. And so I had really high expectations going into this, and I expected this one to have a very emotional impact on me. And for the way I kind of, after reading this book fell flat in every way possible. So basically the premise of the story is that it follows 3 sisters who, when they were very young, lost their mother to cancer, and their father was very kind of distant from them, even from the beginning, even with their mother there, and then things kind of fall apart after their mother passes away. And so kind of flash forward when they're all in their 30s, one of them already has a family, and just kind of their father is still very distant from them, and Vivienne, who is the youngest, is his favorite, and she knows she can manipulate him and do whatever she wants to get what she wants. And so kind of this mysterious stranger comes along and she ends up falling in love with him, and they kind of have a whirlwind romance, and he ends up getting framed for a murder. And so Wyona, who is the oldest sister, is not the biggest fan of him, and all this other stuff that leads to a falling out amongst the sisters. So I'm trying to keep this as vague as possible. I think it's just kind of best to kind of go into this not knowing too much about it. So one of the biggest issues that I had with this, because I said I gave it a 1 out of 5 stars, was that there are several times throughout the book where the author would mention how close these sisters were, and I have a sister, so I know what a close relationship with a sister looks like, and this is like what the sisters have in here is not close. Like several times throughout the story she's like, oh, they're so close and all this stuff, and I was like, no, they're not. And it felt everything but that. And for the first 75% of the novel, like, dealt with like the sisters like they were in like middle school, and they were like catty with each other and like all this stuff, and they were fighting over boys, and it was just like, these are grown women and they're acting like they're a bunch of 13-year-olds. So like I said, they ended up fighting over boys, they were making immature decisions, and they just like, they held grudges that lasted decades. And I'm like, holy smokes, like this was just like, if this is what like kind of she's depicting kind of to relate to a female audience, I'm very lucky I have a sister relationship where it's not like this. And I did not like how Wyona was constantly referred to as fat, and that I kind of felt like her identity and how the author portrayed her was based on her being overweight, which I didn't really appreciate. I don't think it was necessary. And Aurora, who is the middle child, she's just there. I apologize for my voice, I have a bit of a cold. But like, she's just there, and she's just kind of the middleman to make peace between the sisters. She's just always like, oh, let's just all be friends and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And it was just like, you don't really know much about her besides that she's kind of the peacekeeper of the family. We don't really get to know much about what's going on with her as well. She was just there. So I'm kind of reading what I wrote on my little Goodreads review, and then I go, then there's Vivienne. There are so many things I would like to say about Vivienne. She's the type of girl I hated in high school. She's a taker. Everyone gives her the world, but she just takes from those around her. She falls in and out of love. She lies to get out of trouble, and she's completely oblivious to how her actions impact those around her. She puts her own needs in front of what is best for her family and runs away, leaving those around her to pick up the mess that she made. So I think this one, like, Vivienne was just so irritating. She was so immature. She, like I said, she was the girl I hated in high school, and like, she just never grew up. And then like, she just drove me nuts. And there's not like a lot, like there's a little bit of character growth in here, but not enough for me to be like, oh, like I love you now. And I really despised her. I didn't think she was like a very likable character, and like I didn't really, like, you put yourself in this situation, and I'm not throwing you a pity party for it. And then like her husband Dallas, I say here, So I say Dallas really drove me nuts. He only says about 5 lines throughout the entire book, so it's not like we really get to know him. He has anger problems, is possessive towards Vivienne, and even though part of the book focuses on how people misjudged him, there was something off about him. You know how when you meet someone, you just meet someone and you have this gut feeling that something about the person is off and your warning signs go off? Well, that is how I might feel about Dallas. And there's just something about him, he's just like, he really irritated me, and if you've read this book, you know just like what he did, and it was just like, again, he's kind of like with Vivienne where he's throwing the pity party, and it was just like, I don't care for you, buddy. Like, you put yourself in this situation again, and it's not like again, he only says like 5 things throughout this entire thing, so it was just like, didn't really get to know him. And like, even the way the author will describe his relationship with Vivienne, he's very handsy, which I didn't like as well, and he just really drove me nuts. So like I said, this book was a major disappointment in my eyes, and I just was really irritated with how everything played out. So let's just kind of go ahead with Lisa did a review here as well, which I was really excited to see. So I'll kind of highlight some of the parts that she talked about in here. So Lisa ended up really liking this book, as she said. So she said, "I'm sorry to disappoint you. One of the things I love about reading and sharing thoughts is that so many people can read the same book and have very different thoughts, emotions, and perspectives." And I totally agree. Like I said, I think it's good that there is kind of a disagreement in just how we like perceive this book, and I think that leads to a better discussion overall. So she goes, "I actually enjoyed this book. It took me through a mixture of emotions and I was hooked all the way to the end." So she said the character I identified with the most was Wynonna. She's an educated woman but struggles with insecurities, and so I think that's a good way of putting it here. I think like the way I took it is that her insecurities and her like flaws were her identity, but that made her relatable for Lisa, which I think is really like, that's an interesting way to look at it, and how I didn't really perceive it that way, which I think makes her more relatable, and those insecurities as well are kind of like can be related to by a lot of women, which I think is also very important. She kind of struggles like with her weight here in the character, and she says the author was able to capture the dialogue we have with ourselves sometimes, and how they shape our decisions and how we treat others. I have to make the conscious decision to focus on positive thoughts and realize that people don't so Lisa says the author was able to capture the dialogue we have with ourselves sometimes, and how they shape our decisions and how we treat others. So that's an interesting perspective, something that I didn't really take out of it, but now looking back, I think, you know, I kind of see that point of view, and if I were to reread that, I think I would see it from that perspective. So I think that even though like I didn't see it that way, I'm happy that another person was able to kind of get that message out of it and kind of relate to that character in that aspect. So throughout the book, Wynonna saw things the way her father did because she was so desperately wanted his approval, but in the end she had to realize she didn't really need it. She made judgments about Dallas, and rightfully so, because of the way he presented himself, and I didn't really care for him either. I totally agree. I did not really was a big fan of him. Her dislike for him caused her not to be supportive of her sister Vivienne's decision to marry him, and I really didn't blame her, because Vivienne and I, because she had to speak the truth as she sees it. She struggles with her jealousy for her sister Vivienne, and I can understand, because Vivienne was clearly their father's favorite, and he raised her to be a self-centered brat. Yeah. She got engaged to a man she clearly didn't love, only to cheat on him with Dallas, and she had the nerve to get mad at Wynonna for telling her fiance. However, I do admire her dedication to Dallas after he was sent to prison. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really hated how she kind of was just dragging like that guy along, and it was just really irritating. I really hated that, and it was just like, and everyone clearly saw like what was going on, and everyone, but then again, people were oblivious to it, and it was just irritating seeing that when you know the truth and then those around you don't, and it's just really irritating. And then how she got mad at Wynonna for telling like that she was basically having an affair when they were engaged, and like she got mad and ended up on this decade-long dispute and like grudge, and it's just like, they just need to grow up. And I do admire, like again, I do admire her kind of dedication when Dallas was in prison, and it's like, why didn't you show that kind of side of you where you don't have to manipulate people to get what you want? You can work hard for something, and why didn't you show this before all this happened, so it was really irritating. So again, Lisa goes, Aurora was definitely the peacemaker of the three sisters, and I feel bad because she clearly had her own personal struggles, but no one cared. I truly agree she's going through a divorce. Like, her husband really wasn't, it was just kind of a dud, and he ended up cheating on her, but that kind of got thrown on the back burner because all the drama between Vivian and Wyona, and I guess that's like really unfortunate just given the situation. They were so caught up in their own lives to realize her pain, and she didn't talk about her pain because she was so busy trying to make peace. And I totally agree. It was just really irritating. It was just like, and we weren't really given a lot of opportunities anyway to kind of explore Aurora just as herself. We were even kind of getting a narration from her perspective and kind of seeing that as well. So she says, I think my favorite character in the book was Vivian's son. We were able to see and understand the pain he had growing up without his father and the strength he showed to fight for his father's release from prison. In the end, he proved to be the strongest in the family. The saddest person in the book was her sister's father, and I was sad that he never changed his ways and still a bitter man. I totally agree. I think the only kind of part of this book that I really enjoyed was reading the journal entries from Vivian's son and just kind of seeing that perspective, especially growing up in a dysfunctional household. My mom does a lot of child welfare stuff for the courts, and she's a court investigator for the juvenile court, so I get to kind of hear some of the stuff going on in here, and a lot of stuff she talks about what the kids experience kind of going through this is very similar to what is going on in here. And so I like how she kind of, the author, really addressed that, and I thought that was really important as well. I totally agree. I really thought like it was really kind of very sad to kind of see how, even though like all these things were going on, the father didn't change his ways, and he was willing to kind of stay who he was and stay bitter, even though he kind of lost his family in the process. And I think that's really unfortunate, and I think that still happens. I think that's a realistic kind of thing for families to kind of experience. So that was really, I think that's really kind of disappointing, but at the same time very realistic. So yeah, so that's it, guys. This video is already going on quite long now, so but yeah, I'm so happy that Lisa participated in the discussion. Clearly, I think it worked out that we kind of had very different kind of viewpoints on this novel, so it kind of led to a better discussion. But yeah, I think this was probably one of my favorite discussions overall because there were so contrasting viewpoints at times. But yeah, like I said, thank you, Lisa, for participating. I'll have the kind of discussion thread linked down below if you're interested in checking that out. But yeah, that's it. This video is already going very long, but thank you guys so much for watching and participating for these past 2 months for this book club. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.